You know, I was thinking about it the other day, and
Okay.
it's just really wild to me
Yeah.
how we get to, like, pick, like, two sources that are so completely different
Yeah.
and just kind of dive in, you know?
That's the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
It is. It is.
And so today, we've got two
Okay.
very different sources.
Yep.
One is called Les dauphins et les pinguins peuvent être amis.
Okay.
So we're talking about animal friendships here.
I love it.
And then the other one.
Wow.
So we're talking about the possibility of alien life here.
Okay.
So,
This is going to be a good one.
yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So let's start with that first source.
Okay.
Les dauphins et les pinguins peuvent être amis,
All right.
which like translates to can dolphins and penguins be friends?
Interesting question.
And it poses this question,
yeah.
and it gives kind of two different sides of it.
Yeah.
So one side of it is saying like, hey,
Mm.
they both swim really well, so like
Right.
maybe they could be friends.
Yeah, they got that in common.
But then on the other hand, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, dolphins, they live in like
Right.
the tropics and like
Yeah.
warmer water, and
Yeah.
penguins, they live like, you know,
Down south.
way down south near the South Pole.
In the Antarctic, in the, colder waters. Yeah.
Like,
Totally different climates. Yeah.
would they even be able to hang out?
Yeah. It's like trying to be friends with someone who lives, like you said, on a totally different continent.
Yeah.
Speaks a completely different language.
Yeah.
Has totally different customs and culture.
Right.
It's fascinating.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a great question to pose. And I think, you hit the nail on the head there
Yeah.
when you're talking about like just the sheer difference in habitat.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge factor. But even beyond that,
Yeah?
it's like even if they could be in the same place,
Mm-hmm.
would they even want to be friends?
Yeah.
Think about their diets.
Totally different. Yeah.
Completely different. Their
Yeah.
social structures.
Yeah.
Penguins, they're very social. They live in these huge colonies.
Mm-hmm.
Dolphins, they have their own pods.
Right.
Different ways of communicating.
Yeah.
A penguin's waddle and like a, kind of like a squawk
Right.
is very different from a dolphin's clicks and whistles.
Yeah. So maybe a dolphin and
Okay.
penguin book club is out of the question.
Probably not going to happen.
But,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
are there any examples of unlikely animal friendships?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm thinking of like baboons and elephants.
Okay.
You find them in parts of Africa,
Okay.
and the baboons will actually groom the elephants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they'll get like the parasites and ticks off of them.
Oh, that's so cool.
And in return, the elephants, they provide protection.
Right.
They're huge. They can help the baboons get to food.
Yeah.
So it's like a win-win.
Wow.
Another one I think of is ostriches and zebras.
Okay.
I'll often graze together.
Okay.
And what's really cool is the ostriches have incredible eyesight,
Right.
and zebras have a really strong sense of smell.
Oh, wow.
So they kind of work together.
Yeah.
The ostriches can spot predators from far away.
Yeah.
The zebras can smell them.
That's incredible.
And they have like this early warning system.
Wow. So, I mean, it just makes you think, like,
It does.
even animals that have, like, such different
Yeah.
evolutionary paths can, like,
It's true.
find common ground and be friends.
It's amazing.
So, like,
Yeah.
if that can happen,
Mm-hmm.
what does that say about, like, the potential for communication? Like,
Right.
on an even larger scale,
Wow.
like with extraterrestrial life.
Oh, that's a great lead.
That's a big jump.
Yeah,
But-
it's
but
fascinating. And it leads us perfectly into our second source,
Yeah.
which is all about,
Phase extraterrestrial.
yeah, are we alone in the universe?
Which, I mean,
That question.
that's a question that, like, has been asked for
For sure.
so long, right?
Yeah.
And it's led to, like, countless, like, science fiction books and
Oh,
movies. And
oh.
it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of science, though,
Okay.
I've always been really curious about SENI,
Oh, yeah.
the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And
Right.
it seems so...
It's a big undertaking. It's
Yeah.
a big question.
And, like, back in the day, it was all about searching for, like,
right.
radio signals.
Radio waves. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, like, in
Yeah.
our digital age,
Yeah.
like, are they still using, like, radio waves?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like technology has advanced so much,
Yeah.
even in our own, recent
Yeah.
history.
Right.
So who's to say that an alien civilization
Right.
that's potentially millions of years ahead of us
Yeah.
isn't using some form of communication that we can't even fathom?
Right.
So that's why SETI has actually been branching out. They're exploring other things like optical signals, so
Okay.
looking for like flashes of laser light,
Oh, yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And even something called technosignatures.
Technosignatures.
Yeah.
What are those?
So technosignatures are basically signs of advanced technology
Okay.
that could indicate the presence of an intelligent civilization.
So like
So it could be,
giant space lasers.
well, maybe not giant space lasers, but
But like there, you know.
it could be anything from like
Right.
large-scale structures
Right.
to like unusual atmospheric compositions that we wouldn't expect to see naturally.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Things like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
the universe is so big.
It is a mind-bogglingly huge.
It's like statistically improbable that we're like the only ones here.
I mean, you would think so, right?
Right.
Like the odds are definitely in favor of there being other life forms out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But then you have something called the Fermi paradox.
Okay, the Fermi paradox.
Yeah, which basically asks this question.
Okay.
If the universe is teeming with life,
Mm-hmm.
where is everybody? Like, why haven't we encountered any concrete evidence yet?
Yeah.
And that's a real head-scratcher.
I mean, maybe they're just really good at hiding.
Maybe they're just like, super stuffy.
Yeah.
And we haven't detected them yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're using some form of communication
Right.
that we don't even understand.
Yeah, like our zebra and ostrich friends.
Exactly. Like maybe there's something out there
Right.
that we're just not equipped to even perceive
Right.
at this point.
And that's crazy to think about.
It's a big universe.
That's a lot to think about.
A lot of possibilities.
So, I mean, I guess today we've gone from,
You have.
the potential for animal friendships
Mhm.
here on Earth.
Right here in our own
Yeah,
backyard.
to like
Yeah.
the mind-blowing possibility of extraterrestrial life.
Across the vast cosmos.
It's amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
Like, there's just so much out there
There
to
is.
learn and explore.
And it makes you wonder, like, what other connections and possibilities are out there that we haven't even thought of yet.
And, like, who knows,
Mhm.
maybe someday understanding the language of dolphins and penguins and baboons
It's true.
will help us decode
Yeah.
the first message
Right.
from an alien civilization.
You never know. It's wild.
It's a wild thought.
So,
Yeah.
what do you all think out there? Do you think intergalactic friendship
Is it in our future?
in our future? Let us know.
Let us know.
Thanks for tuning in to another deep dive, everybody.
See you next time.
See ya.
Okay, folks. Welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be asking a question that sounds kind of simple on the surface.
Yeah.
Could dolphins and penguins ever be friends?
Interesting.
To get to the bottom of this, we've got excerpts from not one but two French texts.
Okay.
The first one's called, Can Dolphins and Penguins Be Friends? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And the second one is called Extraterrestrials.
Whoa. Okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking. What do those two things have to do with each other?
Right.
But trust me, we're going to use these sources to explore what friendship means across different species, maybe even different planets.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So our first source dives right into this debate about dolphins and penguins.
Mhm.
One side says, hey, they could totally be friends.
Okay.
They both live in the water, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But then the other side makes a good point. Dolphins and penguins don't even live in the same part of the water,
Right.
let alone the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
So what do you think? How much does location actually matter when it comes to friendship?
Well, when we look at intertecies relationships in the wild, like out in nature, a shared environment is often super important.
Okay.
Like, take the classic example of the clownfish in the anemone.
Okay.
The clownfish gets protection from predators by hanging out in the anemone's stinging tentacles.
Right.
And then in return, the anemone benefits because the clownfish chases away harmful fish.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's this really cool partnership that works because they share a habitat.
Right.
And it's mutually beneficial. It's
Yeah.
hard to picture that kind of symbiosis happening if they lived miles apart,
That's such a great example.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if even slight environmental differences can put a damper on friendships here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take to connect with beings from like a totally different planet?
You're worrying on a really crucial point. It begs the question, what are those like universal fundamental aspects of connection?
Right.
That could maybe even go beyond the boundaries of our planet.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being in the same place.
Right.
What else comes into playing when we talk about friendship,
Yeah.
especially between different species?
Well, communication is huge.
Yeah.
Dolphins have incredibly complex communication systems. They use echolocation whistles, clicks.
Wow.
It's like a whole symphony of sounds that we're only just starting to understand.
Amazing.
It makes you think, could their communication style ever bridge the gap with penguins?
Right.
Who rely more on visual cues and vocalizations?
That's a good point.
Yeah, totally different ways of communicating.
Yeah, it's like trying to have a conversation with someone who speaks a completely different language.
Exactly.
Which actually brings us to our second source,
Okay.
the one about extraterrestrials.
All right.
So if we entertain the possibility that there is life beyond Earth,
Uh-huh.
could we even recognize alien friendship?
That's where things get really interesting.
I know, right?
Would their communication be anything like what we're familiar with?
Good question.
Could it be something completely different,
Yeah.
like telepathy or shared energy fields?
Whoa.
And if that were the case, could we even perceive it,
Right.
let alone interpret it as a gesture of friendship?
Yeah.
It's a wild thought.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how all of this connects.
Yeah.
These two questions that seemed kind of separate at first.
Uh-huh.
Could dolphins and penguins be friends, and could we
Right.
be friends with aliens? They
Exactly.
both boil down to the same fundamental questions.
Okay.
What is friendship, really?
Yeah.
And how can we recognize it, even when there are these massive differences?
Exactly. It pushes us to look beyond our Earth-centric perspective.
Right.
And to consider that connection could exist in forms we haven't even dreamt of.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it really is.
So what does all of this mean for us back here on Earth?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, how should we think differently about friendship?
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about animals in the ocean
Yeah.
or hypothetical beings on another planet?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway here is open-mindedness.
Okay.
We need to be willing to expand our definition of connection. Look beyond shared environments and communication styles that we're used to.
Right.
Who knows what amazing forms of friendships are out there just waiting for us to discover them.
I love that.
Yeah.
So to all of you listening out there, here's something I want you to think about.
Okay.
If we ever encountered intelligent life from another planet,
Mm-hmm.
how would we even begin to build a connection?
Yeah, great question.
What common ground could we find?
Right.
And what could we learn from each other?
It's exciting to think about.
It is. Keep those questions in mind, deep divers.
Absolutely.
This conversation is far from over.
It never ends.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.